Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask that you like us, leave comments if you'd like, and maybe even support us on Patreon. Just an update on our Bali trip. Things are going well for that, but we are looking for a couple more people. We do have some openings, so if you're interested, go to our website, yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com, and click on the Bali link, and you'll get all the information there. So today's guest is someone who was introduced to me by my friend Ronnie Weiss. She was on a prior podcast as she was doing her debut party for her new CD. But she told me that you really need to talk to Robyn Accetturo because she's got this fantastic book. And I asked her how she knew about the book, and she said, well, I've got some notes on the book cover. So I did a beta reading for her. Robyn is a licensed clinical social worker. She's a Reiki master healer and teacher and an ordained spiritualist minister. And if you're not sure what spiritualism is, it's the science, philosophy, and religion of continuous life based upon the demonstrated fact of communication with those who live in the spirit world, proven through mediumship. She has written 2 nonfiction books which show our extraordinary powers of unconditional love and faith in action. Some call Reverend Robyn an earth angel. She's been able to employ the Christ consciousness and move mountains for many people here on earth, just as Jesus said we would. It has taken her since 1987, when her spiritual awakening began in the form of prophetic dreams, to stand in her spiritual power publicly. Her journey to becoming a vessel for the Christ consciousness has been filled with trauma. She endured many hardships in life, including codependency as a child, to escaping domestic violence as a young woman. And her truth shows that what happens to us does not have to define us, as she turns each experience into an opportunity for her soul's growth. Her mental health spiritual operations manual, I Am the Reluctant Messiah, and So Are You, provides a blueprint to follow to help us step into the vibration of the Christ consciousness. And it's an amazing book. I have it on display here on the table in front of me. And I have read it and just found so much wisdom there. So without further ado, I'd like Robyn to tell us the story of her spiritual journey.
Thank you so much, Bob. It certainly has not been an easy one, I'll tell you that. I don't think any of ours is. I just wanted to start with something that, I don't know, means a lot to me. If you think about it, seeds have to be planted in darkness and covered in dirt, right? In order to grow, to reach the light. So do we. So I would also like to share quickly. I have many photos of spirit as light. The cover of my book is one example. I will show it here. It's actually my husband meditating at Oakmont. I think it's called Riverview Park in Oakmont on the Allegheny River. This next one was taken in June of 2020 when I performed my daughter and son-in-law's wedding during COVID, um, at a state park in Pennsylvania. This picture was staged at 12 o'clock noon. That is not the sun. The sun would be straight overhead. And I don't know if you could see it, but they're actually standing in total shade. And in
Yeah.
the this was taken from my son in law's mom's cell phone. And in the first photo, the light image is only 20% there. And the photos were taken like 2 seconds apart. This is the center photo, and the light is on an angle. So it is not the sun, it is my husband. And it goes to my daughter's waist. And as soon as my son-in-law or future son-in-law in this photo turns around to look at my daughter, it disappears. And the
Uh,
pictures are literally taken 2 seconds apart. The first spirit photo I ever received was I don't know if you could see it, but there's a duck-billed platypus floating midair.
yeah.
And that was taken in 2008 at my ordination in a spiritual church in Chicago. And behind me, oops, I guess I should go on this side, is an angel photo that's the cover of my second book. And this is the little boy that my book is about. And the artist who drew the artwork that you see here had read my manuscript. She didn't wasn't a medium that she knew of, but while she was creating this angel that is entitled Surely Goodness and Mercy from the 23rd Psalm, which she said was at the time of Christ, she completely erased the head and can't really see it, but this is the little boy my book's about. And oh my gosh, she painted him as that angel. So my journey has been quite powerful and sometimes frightening. Scared me like, who am I? And pick somebody else. And this is too much responsibility. And I'm nobody, that type of feeling. So even when I was a little girl, um, even when I went to church, I always felt so uncomfortable with the shared messages. You're a sinner, all that kind of stuff. And I'd be sitting there going, wait a minute, they don't even know me. How am I a sinner? I haven't done anything wrong. So that bothered me. So I tried many churches as a kid. And when my children were young, my husband and I also took them to many different churches, mostly New Thought churches. And actually, I met Ronnie Weiss at Unity in Pittsburgh, which is a fabulous church,
Mm.
for Christmas Eve, the year my husband died, which was 2019. Um, and what I want to share is that every single trauma, every single difficult experience that we go through is really an opportunity for our soul to come out and show itself and for us to learn soul lessons from these experiences. Um, I'll share that as a kid, when I was in kindergarten in Chicago, our Chicago public school was chosen as a pilot project for desegregation in 1967. And the day that two busloads of kids came from the west side of Chicago to our northwest side school, it's called Norman Bridge School. It was one of the top elementary schools in the city. Um, wow, I saw my mom in action, and it's probably one of the reasons I eventually became a social worker. Um, Two busloads of Black children were bused to our school, and I was absolutely horrified as almost every parent that was there but my mother was there to harm these children, throw rocks at them, set the American flag on fire. And my mother was very brave. And she not only stopped the woman from burning the American flag, as a result, on our local newspaper, oh my goodness, the cover of the paper was like a mugshot of her face and it literally called her an NI blank blank ER lover. And we got death threats. And it was scary for me, but it put something in me to want to, I think, serve, help the world to make it a better place. I literally, at 6 years old, gave up my friends because I thought if they do that to those kids, they could do that to me. And I became best friends with one of the black girls from school. Moving on in confirmation, and this is interesting. My mother was Irish Catholic. My father was Jewish. And they let us 5 kids, I'm the youngest of 5, choose where we wanted to have a relationship with God. So my older sibs picked a Lutheran church because that's where all their friends went, and that's where Boy Scouts met. So I was baptized Lutheran. I think I was 3. And then in 6th grade, I attended confirmation. We had moved from Chicago to the western suburbs. And I probably participated over 2 years, and I was about to get confirmed in like a month. And the pastor said the most derogatory joke about a Jewish person, and everyone laughed, and I was mortified. And I went home and I told my parents, I don't ever want to go back there. And they said, you know what? That's okay. You don't have to. So I quit. And few years, well, actually, my mom began drinking heavily when I was about 9 or 10. And that had a huge impact on the rest of my life, really. Um, Her mother had died in Ireland, and she wasn't able to get back there. And I think that, and also the kind of the same thing I'm going through about not wanting to shine, especially after we got death threats and phone calls after that experience. She kind of dimmed her light, and alcohol sure did the trick. So when I was 17, I moved out because my mom's drinking was at an all-time high, and it was very rough to literally, I felt like she was killing herself. I moved out and I moved in with a Vietnam veteran who was a pre-med major at University of South Florida. And wow, um, that was pretty rough. I stayed 6 years. It ended up turning into domestic violence, and I always had his best interest at heart, not mine. I wanted to help him, just like I wanted to help my mom. That's what codependency is, putting the needs of others above your own. But what that, again, the little seeds that spirit plants for us. So I want to say it's not just spirit, it's us, it's our soul, it's God, it's the universe helping us to uncover our light within. This was part of the plan. I had to go through it. And as crazy as that sounds, I know that to be true with the way my life has expanded and been. So after I ended up having the courage to leave this man after I married him, because he told me if I married him after the 6 years, I was 23 years old, that he would get help and we could live happily ever after. Well, in those 30 days that before I had the courage to leave, I'm lucky he didn't harm me very badly. So my cat was instrumental in why I left. And Toby was her name. And I literally left. My father had died. I had called my mom, who was still drinking, but I hid in the bushes. I ran out while he went to the store or something, and I took my cat, and she had had 3 kittens, which was a miracle. And I hid in the bushes, and my mom sent a taxi to pick me up. And I had my clothes in a paper bag and about $30 in my pocket. And I moved back home, and my mom found an incredible therapist for me who was very instrumental in changing my life. And before I started therapy, he told me I had to read this book called The Language of Feelings by David Viscott, MD. David Viscott is no longer alive, and unfortunately, um, they're not printing more of his books. But this book called The Language of Feelings is really the basis of that book. I am the reluctant Messiah, and so are you. But I added on to it quite a bit. And what that book did for David Viscott, by the way, was the first full-time call-in radio show in 1985. I think his show came out. Believe it or not, Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live, remember him, who would look in the mirror and say, "I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me," is based on David Viscott.
Ugh,
He was on Saturday Night Live, and Stuart Smalley appeared on the show, and that's who he's based on. So that book profoundly changed my life because it helped me to name my feelings and to claim them so that it wasn't so confusing and muddled. And then I could figure myself out and figure out how I got myself into this mess so that I would never allow myself to experience codependency like that again. Um, in my book, there are a lot of examples from my life. So my second book is like a mental health spiritual operations manual that shows the reader kind of how to heal their hearts of trauma with or without a therapist so that they can step into their spiritual power as I have done. And it isn't something I sought out. It's something that I almost want to say happened to me and for me, as the more I healed my heart and filled it with the unconditional love I saw in my mom in kindergarten, helping those kids that she didn't even know, and non-judgment. Those are really key that I have experienced, not to judge and to know that other people have had a really tough life if they're acting the way that they are, and to really have kind of empathy for them. So after 9 months of intensive therapy, I had dropped out of college. I moved back to Chicago, and I finished my undergrad. And during undergrad, um, finishing at University of Illinois at Chicago, I met my current husband, who unfortunately has passed away in 2019. But again, that's part of this journey. I wouldn't have that photo of him as light if he hadn't passed away. And as sad and difficult as it is, I'm accepting of it and actually very grateful that we're a team and we work together, and he works with me from the other side of the veil. So we put each other through graduate school. And during my first year of graduate school in 1987, I had my first prophetic dream. I had never had prophetic dreams before. It was quite frightening. It came true right before my eyes. And then a week later, a second dream about the same patient came true. And literally, she passed away, and I helped her sons make a decision to pull her from a ventilator, which is not what she wanted to be on. And it really shook me up. I was like, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing here, but you've picked the wrong person. I don't know how to do what you're asking me to do. Sorry, it gets emotional. Um, Pick somebody else. I was very frightened because the power of it was a lot. And in between those two dreams, I used to have my clinical internship first year 2 days a week and classes 8 hours 3 days a week. So in between the prophetic dreams, on a Wednesday, I went to my 8 hour of classes, and boy, did the universe sock it to me. Every single class was on death and dying. This was before my patient died, just exactly like in my dream. And in the first dream, the psychiatrist who was the attending physician on the inpatient psychiatric unit at the geriatric hospital I was at out of Rush University Medical Center, which, by the way, where Chicago Med is filmed on Wednesday nights. Interesting that it's Wednesdays. Um, his name was Dr. Garrow, and frankly, I've been working with him for over 30 years, but I never told him about the dream because back in the 80s, you didn't go around telling people, "Oh, I had this experience with this dead person," or "I had this prophetic dream." Especially because when I graduated, I was working on a locked inpatient psych unit, and my husband would tell me, "You gotta be careful, they're gonna lock you up next to one of your patients if you let this out of the bag, let the cat out of the bag." Well, I kinda had to, at least privately, because I graduated, and while I'm working on this locked adult psych unit, my husband and I had found a spiritualist camp in the United States in Anderson, Indiana, actually Chesterfield, called Camp Chesterfield. The National Spiritualist Association of Churches has three official places you can study in the United States. One is in Lilydale, one's in Cassadaga, Florida, and one's in Chesterfield, Indiana. So one of the students in my support group at Rush shared this information with my husband and I, and it took us a year to get the courage up to go. My father-in-law had died a year after we were married. He was only 54. A lot of deaths, and we weren't ready to decide if we wanted to talk to a dead relative or not, because that's what the friend had shared. Sorry, I have a cat hair on my nose. That's what the friend had shared would help me, that I could learn about my dreams and take participate in them. So we were led to a spiritualist camp, which, as you shared, is the science, philosophy, and religion based upon mediumship that shows we don't die. And I have to tell you, the first time my husband and I each had a reading, we went for the weekend, we were blown away. It was, I would say, indisputable. My father came through. He had died when I was 21. The abuser had had me do some very shaming things to get money from my dad or drugs when he was dying in hospice. It was quite shaming. And the first question on my what's called a billet, which is a piece of paper where the medium has you write down questions you'd like to ask your loved ones in spirit or your spirit guides or your angels. And then you at the top of the paper you write the names you want to contact in spirit. You write your questions, fold the paper in half, and you sign your full name as it currently is. If you're married and it's your married name, that's how you sign it in cursive. And then the medium says an opening prayer, at least this is how we do it. And she held the paper here to her third eye, to her heart. And we said the Lord's Prayer, and she opened. And she did not open the paper. She opened the session. She had the paper in her hand, put it on the table, folded, never opened it. Her first response was, "I have a Sam here. I didn't write Sam. I wrote Dad. My dad's name was Sam." And he said, "It's already done." My first question was, could you ever forgive me for how shameful it was of this one specific incident that I share in my book? And I'm very vulnerable. And the medium didn't even read the question, but the answer from my father was, so I asked for forgiveness, was, "It's already done." And I couldn't stop crying in the reading. It was so incredibly powerful. And then I came out and it was my husband's turn. And he's like, "Oh, okay." When he came out, we were absolutely blown away. Here we are, psychiatric social workers. He was also in school full time. I went first. And at work, people were given severe, psychotropic medication or electroconvulsive shock therapy for their visions or hallucinations, I would call them. And we questioned everything like, God, how can this be? I'm paying someone money here and they're hallucinating? How does this work? So the more that I asked, I am not kidding you, Bob. Patients on the psych unit. When I graduated, I worked on an inpatient locked adult psychiatric unit at a hospital in Chicago. Patients would come and answer my questions. I didn't say them aloud. They were in my head. There are several examples in my book that I share these experiences, but the most profound one was an African American gentleman who was bipolar, who had been on the same psych unit for 30 years, but I was new. And I was teaching in my therapy group the things that I share in this book. And um, the first thing the gentleman said to me, I said, "So, what is the reason for your admission?" And he said, "To meet you, Robyn." Oh boy, that's quite a response from a brand new student right out of grad school. My heart's going, and I'm like, okay, thinking in my mind, this is crazy, keep going. And I did. And then the gentleman gave me 100% accurate, clairvoyant reading of my life while I was supposed to be interviewing him. He told me he'd been waiting to meet me my whole life. He was a master auto mechanic, and that I had to go purchase the book Auto Repair for Dummies and read the chapter on the four-stroke cycle combustion engine. And I was like, why? And he's like, because all those things you have floating in your head, you need to get on paper because this is real and this is God and this is God working through you. And I'm here. I've been waiting to meet you my whole life. I want to go home. Like, okay. So I went home, talked to my husband, and we went and bought Auto Repair for Dummies. I still have it. And I studied the four-stroke cycle combustion engine. And when I went back into work, I would meet with this gentleman from 5 to 6 every day for about 3 weeks. And I put everything on paper and I came up with a theory, which at that time I called the coming of new humanity. And it was actually dated. I typed it on a typewriter. We didn't even have computers back then. And I typed it on January 11th, 1990, which in numerology is 1111, which is quite powerful. And I shared it with my favorite undergrad professor, Dr. Christopher Keyes, who I had done some independent study for, and he's a well-written community psychologist, and he was head of the clinical psych department at UIC for many years. He's now professor emeritus at DePaul University. And I will share that both Dr. Garrow, the psychiatrist in my first dream, who now we've become very good friends, I did share my dream with him, which he kind of laughed and said, "Why are you just telling me now? Why didn't you tell me back then?" And I said, "Because I didn't want you to think I was crazy." He's like, "Oh, I know you. I wouldn't think that." And I had both of these gentlemen read my manuscript of I Am the Reluctant Messiah before I published it to get their feedback. And Dr. Garrow ended up writing my foreword, and Chris Keyes wrote an incredible endorsement for me, which really gives me some courage to move forward with who I am and what I'm here to do. But getting back to the patient, his name was Billy. He was, I don't know, I want to say maybe 70. I don't really remember. This was back in 1989, or yeah, 1989, because I wrote my theory January of 90. So one thing I want to add is that first weekend, my husband and I went to camp. After our readings, we went to the cafeteria to have a cup of coffee. We were freaking out. We were sitting at the table across from each other, and our hearts were racing. We were like, oh my God, what does this mean for us as social workers? What does this mean for us as humans? We wanted to rent an airplane and write in the sky, there's no such thing as death. We were completely blown away. And apparently, a medium sitting kind of a few feet from us started laughing at us, and she asked if she could join us. We said, sure. And I kind of like vomited everything onto her because I was so freaked out. Like, oh my God, can God, I want to do this and have God pick somebody else. And she laughed and said, all right, calm down. He's like, if you God chose you for this, God chose you for this. You're gonna see it through. This is a sacred contract. That means you agreed to it before you came here. And all you have to do is before you go to sleep tonight, say your prayers and ask God to show you in a dream how to slow it down and take your fear away. And at the same time, she also shared, were either my husband and I working with a young black child? I said, no, we don't work with children. She said, well, you will, because he's standing right there. We're like, what do you mean? You could see the spirits of live people? And she's like, yes. Okay. She's like, Robyn, I think it's for you, and you're going to have quite the story to tell. Oh, my goodness. That's my first book. And that experience walking this little boy through 22 months of his life before he died of AIDS, I think is what taught me the most on this spiritual journey because it was so dark and so frightening. Had I not held on to my faith and to these spiritual experiences, knowing that God was in charge and that this was something bigger that I was just a piece of, and that it was a sacred contract, um, helped, still helps me to this day. So what had happened was, okay, I went to sleep, said a prayer. All right, God, help me take away my fear. Woke up in the morning. I slipped out to the cafeteria with my journal and I wrote down my dream. And in this dream, I had met up with a shaman, and we were in a grass hut with mud floors, thatched roof. Um, the shaman, um, we were naked, but you couldn't see anything. We had white fluorescent paint painted on us with symbols and kind of the frothy stuff a baby's born with all over us. And he had on all kinds of cool things, bones and necklaces and crystals. And we danced a dance with no words, Bob, only it felt like the heartbeat of Mother Earth. It was incredible. Just this drumming beat. And we just twirled in a circle. And when I woke up, my fear was gone. Okay, fast forward. So that was while I was in, uh, yeah, I was on the psych unit. So as I'm studying with Billy, the four-stroke cycle engine, and I have my theory down on paper that I'm teaching people in group that's having a profound impact on them, and they're getting better and they're changing and they're excited about themselves again and realizing I was showing them they were spirit operating their body, but because I wasn't a minister and I was a social worker, I couldn't really say spirit. So I think at the time I called it they were a flower. What kind of flower are you? Because I didn't want to get in trouble. Well, I ended up getting in big trouble. And I've been self employed since 1991 because apparently my energy irritates some people. Um, so what had happened was while I was studying with Billy and I had the theory down, um, I kind of was daydreaming, and we had a great relationship. No one knew we were sneaking away for an hour at 5 o'clock Monday through Friday to create this. And as I'm looking out the window, the dream of the shaman came into my mind. And all of a sudden, Billy comes over, puts his hand on me, and says, I was wondering when you were going to figure that out, Robyn. I was like, oh my God, Billy was the shaman in my dream. Again, I couldn't share. I went home and shared with my husband. And shortly after that experience, I almost got fired from the unit because the patients in my level of medium level of functioning group, my supervisor had the low and high level. My patients were teaching everybody else on the unit the tools that I teach in this book. And they staged a hunger strike on a Friday night to complain to the administrator that they didn't appreciate that the nurses were telling them to lock their feelings, write their feelings on a piece of paper and lock them in a drawer. And I was telling them the opposite. You have to feel it to heal it. So to make their point, they went on a hunger strike on a Friday night. And on Monday, I was told I would get fired if I didn't stop teaching what I was teaching in group. So I gave my notice the next day, and I started working with Cook County, which is all of Chicago, but it goes from Calumet City all the way to Hanover Park. This was in 1990 when um, we had just figured out that women and children could get AIDS. So I was the first master's level social worker, and frankly, only because it paid so little. And when I left, no one took the job. Um, I served Department of Children and Family Services intact families with AIDS. So that meant for each case I carried, um, perhaps the parents had it, perhaps all the children had it, perhaps they all had AIDS. And DCFS's thought was we need to keep them together till they die. Well, I had 18 cases, which were pretty tough. 17 were neglect, but my one abuse case was absolutely god awful. And it's of this little boy right here, who is the little boy that the medium saw standing between my husband and I. She's said to me, his huge almond eyes. You see those eyes?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we met him and I worked with him for 22 months. And it was the most frightening thing I've ever done in my life. When I got the case, he had fallen 2 stories out of a window. Those legs were crushed. And DCFS frankly did nothing but put her in the system for lack of supervision and dumped the case on me. They were my second case. This mother had severe borderline personality disorder. And I was, in a lot of ways, prepared because in my psychopathology class for my graduate degree, to pass psychopathology, we had to watch the original movie Fatal Attraction. I don't know if you've ever seen, but it's pretty
Yeah.
darn frightening. Glenn Close plays a severe borderline woman who has an affair with Michael Douglas, and let's just say in the end, it's it's horrible. It's frightening. She breaks into their home and is violent, and well, that's unfortunately someone with severe borderline personality may have the capabilities of losing impulse control and doing something like that because they're so filled with rage. So my book addresses a lot of things, including borderline personality disorder, and I kind of explain it in terms of how we cope with our feelings from in womb to birth and more. Anyway, I will say that, as I said earlier, it was a profound experience, and there are so many examples in my first book of God being 100% real, spirit being real, to save this little boy and to keep him safe from his violent mom. And I will share the tools that I teach in this book. I used on that mom, just like I used on the patients in the psych unit. And not so much I used on them. I did with her, but I shared in my group so that they could learn for themselves how to do it. So I will share that the first sentence of my first book says, in the fall of, and I'll try not to cry, in the fall of 1992, Delilah Miller refrained from suffocating her 2-year-old son Simon with a pillow. That's the first sentence of my first book. And the tools in this book, my second book, are what got her there. They really do work, and they're pretty simple. It's just we're complicated. We complicate things. We're the ones that create all of this. So, sorry. So, it's been an incredibly powerful journey, and when my so I will share my husband, became very ill when our son was about 13. Out of the blue, he was totally healthy, and all of a sudden, he just became so ill, and it took us over 4 years and bankruptcy to get answers because Western medicine was horrible and did not put together all of the symptoms. And we were over $100,000 in medical debt from integrative medicine trying to get answers. And we lost our home, we lost everything. And what ended up happening is when our kids were little and we were studying at Camp Chesterfield, Spirit gave me the title of this book. I am the reluctant Messiah, and so are you. And they said, tuck it away. You're going to know when to write it. Little did I know what we had to go through, and that my husband had to pass away from five horrible autoimmune diseases that he got from the environment when he was 18. We found out the cause and finally got a diagnosis, I think, in year 4 of his illness. And with what he had, they say it takes 4 years to get a diagnosis, and for many people, you're dead by year 7. Well, he made it 9 years, but it was profoundly difficult. And I had to grieve him along the way because to save his life, they had him on 1,000 milligrams of prednisone a day, which was horrible. And it did save his life, but he was alive, but it altered him so much. It was very rough. So I'm just incredibly grateful that he started to come through after he died the day after by just like Patrick Swayze in Ghost when he's singing I'm Henry the Eighth I Am to Whoopi. My husband kept putting a song in my head that would not stop. And the first song was Waterloo by ABBA. And it because I kept saying, how could this be, God? How could you let this happen now and in this way? It was devastating. And my husband answered me in that song. Every lyric, if you read it, is phenomenal in answering my why. Well, I will share that he's been gone 6 years, and I'm probably up to 217 songs that he's put in my head, often on the radio. Usually they come in threes, and it tells me he knows exactly what's happening to me all the time because the songs are profoundly explanatory of whatever I'm going through at the time. So, um, I will just share that it's not been easy standing in the spiritual power because I still have that thought that I'm working on. I'm not worthy. Who do you think you are? But those really aren't my thoughts. Those are my past and my fear and growing up and all the crap that's in our heads. And one of the things I delineate in my book is called stinking thinking. And it's a huge thing. We all do it. We have 5 spiritual senses that coincide with our 5 physical ones. And when I was first introduced to them at Camp Chesterfield and from a mentor we studied with, Reverend Sally Wales, who was in Chicago, um, I couldn't believe it was like, really? That's all it is? I've been using that sense my whole life, but I never knew that's what it was. So, for example, you're at a stoplight. And a voice in your own head, it's usually our own voice, says, don't turn left. You hear it. You feel it, but you hear it. At least I do. That's our clear audience. That's hearing with our spiritual ears. It's the thought we don't think that are so important. So, stinking thinking is a term coined by Albert Ellis on rational behavior emotive therapy. And stinking thinking basically is defined as thoughts we think that don't serve our highest good. Well, that's most people's thoughts all day long. So we're listening to those and we're believing them and we're acting on them. And we think that's all we are and that's all there is. And I'm here to show you and tell you, stop it. That's not us. That's our programming. Once we're able to stop and don't listen to those thoughts and don't feed it our energy and don't give it our attention, your life starts to change. Once you can go from those thoughts to your heart, spirit really works with you. They work with all of us. We all have spirit guides. We all have a team of helpers we're that are here to help us. We're born with them in our band, and they're here till we go back home. So um, I guess I would just share that uh, life is really up to us what we make of it. We're really here to uncover our light, like that
Yeah.
seed in the darkness. We're here to poke our head out and go, what's this? And to really start to look inside and master our stinking thinking. But feeling our feelings is so important because our feelings energetically stop us because they're stuck. And the more feelings we have that we haven't felt that are stuck in our hearts and in our body and cause disease, dis-ease. I have several. I'm still working on it. Um, it's our body, mind, spirit's way of really waking us up and allowing us to step into who we really are and why we are here, why each one
Yeah.
of us is here, why we came here. We are here for a purpose.
One of the things
Mm.
that impressed me about your book is the number of tools that you make available to those who read your book. Uh, and as you said, these are tools that you personally have used, so you know that they work. Uh,
Absolutely. I could have written more, but I needed to stop at some point.
oh, gee,
There's a
yeah,
lot of tools. Yeah.
there are so many. So
Yes.
you give 7 tools for well being, and then
Mm.
you give 9 tools that help people with mental, emotional health. And then you give 21 tools for spiritual self growth. And
Wow.
that's a lot of tools.
I had no idea. Thanks for counting them. That's pretty neat.
Well, I was just so impressed because uh, one of the things that we try to focus on with this podcast is to give people tools that they can use uh, along their spiritual journeys to make their lives better. And this book, audience, is just full of these tools and examples of how you can use them, how you can apply them. And one of the things that Robin mentioned was that it's one thing to go to a therapist who uses these kind of tools, but it's another thing to say, well, some of these tools can be self-help. I can do this myself and work through those. So it doesn't mean don't go to a therapist if you need one.
Exactly.
But a lot of this stuff you can just apply for yourself. So I have a question. And toward the end of your book, you mentioned the solfeggio frequencies,
Hmm.
and that there are 7 common frequencies. There are more than that. And as I looked at those frequencies, I know that I have some tuning forks, and some of those tuning forks match up with the frequencies that you mentioned.
Yes.
But could you talk a little bit about the importance of frequency and what that has to do with your health?
Sure. I'll do my best. So let's use this as an example. When I left domestic violence, I was pretty low. I was
Mhm.
afraid. I was filled with fear. I was filled with grief. My dad had died 2 years earlier. The abuser, in order to not get beat up, I had to do certain things, or there would be a consequence. And sometimes it would entail betraying my dad to get money. It was horrible. So imagine my vibration with those heavy shame, grief, anger, rage. They're very real. They all are very important. I'm not saying anger is bad. Anger is not bad. Anger is great. It has its place. Every part of us, every feeling we have is so important because it's telling us something. Well, when we're filled with those and we haven't felt them and we're storing them up like squirrels storing nuts, right? Because we're so afraid to feel our hurt and loss, which is at the core of every single thing that's difficult that we've been through. Every negative feeling goes back to hurt and loss. Hurt hurts. We don't want to hurt. So we use different defenses to protect ourselves from feeling that original hurt. Well, then we have another experience that has hurt and loss, but we never felt the first one, and so on and so on and so on. And now we're 50 years old. We have a million of them. And our hearts have become so dang hardened and filled with rage and anger at all these feelings when all the feelings did was show us and try to protect us from our current environment. So, getting back to your vibration, with all that stuck energy in us, we're heavy. We vibrate at a lower, slower rate because it takes that much energy to keep all that energy down. We don't want to let it
Mhm.
out. We don't want to feel it. But as we feel it, heal it and begin to let it go. And like you said, with a therapist or on your own, with hopefully my book as a blueprint, as we let them go, we're lighter and we vibrate higher each time. So the more we can heal our hearts of trauma, the higher our being, literally, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual being becomes a higher vibration. And in order to manifest whatever we want in this 3D world or in this earthly world, we have to match its vibration. So if we're raging and angry and regretful and filled with grief, how are we going to match? I want to manifest this book. It's not going to happen because it's not a vibrational match. So the higher we can vibrate, the more, well, the more Christ like, if that's the word that you're okay with, I am myself, the more that energy can work with us and use us. And Jesus literally tells us, well, churches will tell you, or religions, I guess I would say, teach, worship Jesus. He's up here. No, that's not correct. Jesus tells us, you could do this too. I'm right here. Do it with me. Well, the only way we're going to do it is if we empty our hearts of all this negative stuff we've accumulated and never felt, because who we are is love. God is love. No judgment. Religion has put so much judgment on God and hell, fire, and damnation and all that. I'm going to say crap, excuse me, but to me it is. That's not the truth. The truth is God is love and we are love. And the more we can find that within our hearts and know that this mother who would, I won't give away my first story, but have her son fall 2 stories out of a window after she did something, that's very low vibe.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? By the time she used my tools and we got through to her in 22 months, her little boy she was pregnant with is now 35 years old because when we do the work, it works. We get to uncover our light. We get to uncover who we are. We get to find love within ourselves again. So to me, and for me, I will add that Unfortunately, my husband, in passing away, um, this is tough, and it's in my last 2 chapters, which were probably the hardest for me to write. Um, Spirit had given me the message 3 months before he died. They said he's gonna be gone in 3 months, and I was furious. I was like, "I don't wanna hear it. Go away, leave me alone." And I will say my husband died in 2 months and 3 weeks from the time they told me. And we had come home after visiting both our children, and I was carrying groceries, and my husband came out to help me. And on the second round of walking with groceries up the hill from where I'd parked to our apartment, he was like, I was like, "What? You can't breathe." He's like, "No." I'm like, "Oh my God, you need the Heimlich." He's like, "I don't know." So I tried to do the Heimlich on him, and he didn't need the Heimlich, and he had a pulmonary embolism in my arms, and we both fell. And I fell on the sliding glass door railing, and he literally died on top of me. And I fractured 6 vertebrae trying to help him, and I passed out. So why am I bringing this up? Because sometimes what we have to go through is so horrible. And to this day, so I have 4 closed compression fractures of my lumbar spine. I had 6 fractures. The 2 thoracic ones healed completely. The 4 lumbar ones are called closed compression fractures, and they give me quite a bit of pain. And recently, in the last few months, I personally have experienced vibrational sound healing because I have been through shots for my back. I've been to physical therapy, and this is all in the last year because sometimes the pain is just really tough. And when I experienced vibrational sound healing through crystal bowls the first time, and then I researched something called the harmonic egg, which there's one in Naperville. There's one in Pittsburgh, I understand.
Right.
It is phenomenal. Went literally from an 8 to a 4 in one session. It's the vibrational sound healing through the harmonic egg has something to do with Nikola Tesla's 369 theory of healing or something. I don't know much about it, but I signed up for a year's worth of treatments once a month at a discounted rate because it immediately took physical pain for me from an 8 to a 4. So vibration is really, I'm gonna say the name of the game. We are vibrational beings. Everything is solid because it vibrates, right?
Uh-huh.
Life is a series of vibrations, and the more we can raise our vibration to meet the highest possible, that's when Christ energy, whatever energy you want to call it, God energy, the universe, you match it, it works through you. Miracle after miracle happens every day in my life. And
Well,
sometimes people think I'm a little wacky, but you know what? I don't care. It's okay. You could think whatever. It's not important. What's
yeah.
important is I'm serving and I'm being me and standing in this power, which, like I said, is
Well,
quite
thank
an
you, Robin.
experience.
We have come to the end of our time, and as you know, and I warned you, this is the time you get to leave the audience with a few words of wisdom. We've heard quite a few already, but this is your chance for your last words.
Okay. I wrote something quickly. Every difficulty, every trauma that we experience is an opportunity for our soul to grow. Seeds are planted in agreement with the universe and our soul, which are meant to break us open to our inner truth, which is we are God expressing as each one of us. Wow, that is so powerful. And it's not just in some, it's in every single one of us. So, self mastery, mastering our stinking thinking, mastering the hate, the anger, the rage that's accumulated because of our experiences singularly or collectively. That's what's the key to achieving this place where we can vibrate high enough that God uses us as an instrument for God's divine ideas to work through all of us here on earth. And we each can do it.
Thank you so much. Audience, as always, take what resonates with you and incorporate it into your life. Put the rest on the shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.